do this job properly, you got to get up early and you got to stay up late. There's no other way around it. It's actually hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to act. You know, lying for money, as I tell the kids what I did, that's not hard. Doing difficult stuff well, that's pretty hard.
He's played characters as wide-ranging as Glenn Gould, Pierre Trudeau, and the King of the Frost Giants in Thor. He's acted alongside some of the most distinguished actors in the world, and he's the recipient of the Order of Canada for his contribution to Canadian arts and culture. But Colm Feore's first love is the stage, particularly at Stratford, his hometown, which is where we caught up with him between performances of King Lear. Colm, you were born in Boston but raised in Windsor, is that right? At what point, if you can recall this, did the acting bug get you when you were growing up?
You know what? I actually started really quite young.
Yeah.
I remember being horribly embarrassed when I was chosen to play the king in some play at primary school. And the reason for the embarrassment was girls were going to run their fingers through my hair and feed me grapes. And it was skin-crawlingly embarrassing. And I thought, I'm never doing this again. But clearly that didn't stick.
So did you do theater like through high school and that sort
of thing?
I did,
yeah, we did a lot. Actually, I went off to high school and we did quite a lot because it was the school had various houses that would compete against each other in various things, and plays were one of them. Then we would do a school play, and then we would do an exterior one that would be like the Simpson Series Drama Festival. So we'd have something to go out and enter into that.
Wow, I mean that's a fair amount of artistic stuff for a school. That sounds
well. We were
amazing.
Pretty serious about it, which is odd because the school didn't really pretend to be all that artistic. But you know, it was about the people who were teaching there. Richard Wright, the author, was one of our English teacher, and a guy named Victor Bowman was the drama guy, and he was serious about his drama. So we were doing plays like The Persecution and Assassination of Jean-Paul Marat, performed by the inmates of the asylum of Charenton under the direction of the Marquis de Sade and Tom Stoppard's Jumpers, just for laughs. So, you know.
And you were what age when you were doing this?
We were like 16, 17.
Wow.
And then a roommate of mine, now the Reverend J.P. Weston, was a brilliant playwright. And he could write, you know, I'm sure had he not been, you know, heard the call, he would have been a Hollywood screenwriter. And dashing off brilliant television shows. He was just like that. So we would dragoon the younger form children into the play. You're in the play. Why? Do you want to make my bed or polish my shoes? I'd really rather not. And you're in the play. And so I directed.
School.
Yeah, no, it was kind of exactly like that. That was the model on which it was based. Yeah. And so we got an awful lot of mileage out of that stuff. We did actually quite a lot.
Yeah. What was your first big break professionally?
I guess the start of it would be out of school and, you know, applying to universities, thinking of myself as a pretty middling candidate as a teacher. I think I'd have made a pretty motley university professor. That's sort of where I thought I was headed. But my marks weren't really any good. And I had also, I got accepted to the universities, but, you know, that wasn't quite enough. I needed to want to go there. Yeah. I also auditioned for the National Theatre School. Right. I got in there, and by the time I had the courage to tell my parents, because I'd found out through a backdoor way that I'm on a list, they said, oh, yes, that letter arrived weeks ago. We forged your signature and sent it off. And I thought, well, that's encouraging.
Your parents did that?
Yeah. Well, they thought it was time sensitive, and yes, we'll accept. And I suppose they thought you could always go back on it. There wouldn't be a huge deposit in back in the 70s, right? In any event, they thought, and I agree with them, that of all the candidates who audition for the National Theatre School, they only take a very, very small number. And so they thought, we don't know much about this. But presumably the people who have auditioned him do. And they see something, so let's try it. Because clearly it's a passion and interest. He's doing it extracurricularly at school, etc. So maybe that's worth looking into. I mean, I think they were terrified. But off I went to theater school.
At what age was this?
I was 18. I guess I would have been 19 the moment I got in.
Okay, so that's fairly young for National Theatre School. They usually take older.
Yeah, and most of my class had university degrees, and I felt terribly left out on that score. But by the same token, you know, a degree in acting is only so useful. Actually getting out there and doing it is, I think, on balance, probably just as useful. I've had to catch up in terms of my erudition and autodidactic nature. I've done quite a lot of that. But beyond that, I felt that it was worth just throwing myself into it. And then at the end, you know, you'd only be 21 when you got out. And if it was a bust, you could be a plumber and still, you know, be young enough to start. So that was I think the first real break.
And that was that's National Theatre School is intense, is it not?
It's just ballet at 8 in the morning, and then improv, and then mask, and then voice, and then a play class, and just doing plays. Yeah. And that went on for 3 solid years. Yeah. And in the middle of that, I stayed in Montreal at least one of the summers and was in plays there. So, one was
builds your confidence, right?
Well, being at the theatre school certainly did that, and we had a little bit of the silver spoon syndrome, that we thought we were fantastic and marvelous, and weren't we very NTS and glamorous, because, all of the people who come to teach at the school were probably running theatres across the country, and so there was a very good likelihood that if you managed to graduate, one of them would employ you on their school tour and bus and truck here and there, and that you'd get a running start at the professional theatre. And I went back to speak to them. They give you an honorary glass tube as the award. I tried to get it through Trudeau Airport, even as a faux Trudeau. It was very difficult. I said, does it have your name on it? I said, as a matter of fact, it does. But it looked like a lead pipe. And at this speech, I said, when I graduated, there were 70 theaters and 3 theater schools. Now it's entirely reversed. Yeah. So that the confidence you have in getting a job is, you might have confidence, but there may be no jobs. Yeah. Back then we thought, of course we'll be fine. And even people who got kicked out of theater school did fabulously well. In fact, the earlier you got kicked out seemed to be an indication of how well you would do. But that was, I think, the first break, and coming out then with a solid craftsman-like understanding of how to do this job. Yeah.
My understanding is that you have something of a reputation as being well, I hesitate to use the word fanatical, but maybe it's the right word, or at least obsessive preparer for roles. And the role that you're playing now, the King Lear here in Stratford, my understanding is you really went to extremes in preparing for this.
Well, no more extreme than I would normally do.
Really?
No, not really. I mean, I recognize a certain responsibility for Lear as what must be the best of everything I know to now. So how do I best address that? And, I've been very, very lucky. I've played fabulous, wonderful parts, some that are a great deal, bigger in terms of the size and things that you have to memorize, and the number of fights, and jockeying about, dancing, singing, and, swashbuckling. But Lear is different. And, I talk about Hamlet being filled with very articulate, intelligent, philosophical, poetic, reflective, artful language. Lear has none of that. He's just, what the hell? No, what's going on? And it's all simple and honest and rooted to the guy he is, who, is not the nicest person in the world. But he is an honest person. He's at least honest with himself in that journey of discovery. Doesn't know a thing about himself at the beginning, and way too much at the end. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that properly and responsibly, I had to start early. And I've said before, to do this job properly, you got to get up early and you got to stay up late. There's no other way around it. Yeah. It's actually hard to do. I mean, it's not hard to act. Lying for money, as I tell the kids what I did, that's not hard. Doing difficult stuff well, that's pretty hard. Yeah.
So my understanding is you wrote the whole play out longhand.
Yeah.
In order to
and I do it. I do it. I speak all the lines I can remember, mine including everybody else's, all day. When I leave you, I will go back into doing it. Now I'm also trying to put bow stratagem into my head, so occasionally it's slightly schizophrenic, but.
Yeah, no, I want to ask you about that, because here you are rehearsing for the next play that you're going to be in here, but you're still performing this one, and it seems to me that takes some kind of bifurcation of the brain to be able to pull off.
I've decided to act like a diamond, so that, another facet will reveal another facet will reveal another. So instead of doing bow stratagem or Lear, I do most of Julius Caesar, or what I can remember of Hamlet, or The Taming of the Shrew. Just, it's about, Yo-Yo Ma would sit down and play cello suites every morning, and it's that. You need to be able to be that facile, I think, with the material in order to have any hope of responding live and intuitively when you're there. We did a performance of Lear the other day, when you were incidentally not at. It would have been good. Yes. Where I said to my daughter, you're off my list, and not the barbarous Scythian, nor he that makes his generation messes to gorge his appetite. When I said the barbarous Scythian, somebody down right in the house went, who? And I stopped. I went, what? And I was about to tell them. I thought, No, it's not my place. Look it up. I got to get on with the play. But it's that kind of, you have to be free with the music to go, what? I'll hold that note for a while you, or if they're going to cough, if they're going to sputter, and I think, you're going to miss this. I can feel people about to cough. I can hear something distracting in the house. I can even feel my comrades behind me going, and I'll stop and just arrest our action for a second to make sure that you actually hear each and every word. So that kind of stuff is hard to...
How physically demanding is it? It would seem to me that this would be physically exhausting.
It's massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's massive in that when you're on, you're really, really on. And I don't think about doing King Lear and thinking, oh, I've got to do King Lear today. It's like I'm climbing Mount Everest. I think, I'm just going to do the first scene. And I really believe that today, it's going to work out. We're going to the south of France. My daughter's going to get married. We're going to have grandkids. I'll be there with a glass of pink wine, petting kids and dogs on the head. It's going to be great. And I just do the first 5 minutes. But it turns out in the first 60 lines, everything goes to crap. It just falls apart. Within 60 lines, hi, how are you? I'm going to divide the kingdom. People are screaming. And it's so fast that if I trick myself into just doing that scene, the rest of it tumbles after. Yeah. And he gives you rests. And when Shakespeare gives you a rest, it's an indication very clearly that you should not be able to go on, right? You should have exhausted something that requires a 20-minute rest. The first act of Hamlet. After that, he gets 20 minutes off, and then he's on pretty much for the rest of the play. And the fight is at the end. He's trying to say, if you don't give your all here, there'll be no point in coming back. So the same is true of Lear. You have to give absolutely everything. And if you see backstage me and Scott Wentworth and Steve who we met, who are, senior players, or middle-aged senior players, running up and down, charging through stairs. At the end of each of the scenes that I do, the bigger, scenes, I leave the stage wanting to vomit, and actually trying very hard not to for the sake of my cast members. But they require such an enormous amount of kind of bellows strength to actually speak and do in the way that we, Antony Cimolino and the company have decided we'd like to do them. Yeah. That by the end of it, you've stirred up such an enormous amount of bile and wind and whatever that you just think, I'm just going to vomit here in a moment and I'll be right back.
Wow. And
then you go back, and we keep doing that till the end.
Wow.
It's really cool. It's a wonderful thing to do.
It doesn't sound so cool.
Well, but you stay reasonably fit doing it.
Yeah, I would think. I saw in one interview that you did, you made a reference to John Cassavetes in The Tempest. And I thought it was interesting because Cassavetes, I always loved Cassavetes, but that's a certain style of acting.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a monstrous fan of Christopher Plummer. He is the last, I believe, of an actor, the kind of actor who did so many things, so much, so young, and so thoroughly, so often. He won't stop working. For this, I'm not entirely in love with him because, of course, there are jobs that I could get. But let that pass. He will retire someday or die, but all in good time. But he is an extraordinary creature. I can't do what he can do. I didn't grow up that way. I didn't train with that kind of immense facility, doing 2 different plays in rep in the same week. In the same year, yes, 3, 4 plays at a time. So we're patterned off that, but not nearly as just subcutaneous. It's part of his nature. So something new had to happen. A new generation of the actors who are going to come in and now play these parts. And we, who don't have that kind of, O'Toole, Richard Harris, Plummer style, have to find something else. What sits very well with us, and what sits very well in Stratford, a Canadian place that takes its traditions from England and its some of its style from America. We've become the perfect place to blend a respect for technique and a passion for the truth of it. The method style. Yeah. And for me, Cassavetes is possibly one of the best examples of that raw. Just tell me the truth. Just tell me the goddamn truth. A cross between George C. Scott and John Cassavetes standing out there going, show me the magic. You want a storm? Storm. Go ahead. Hit me with it. I've already put up with the worst of it. Right? So engaging a contemporary, truth that makes some sense to me with all of the skill that I've got hold of with Shakespeare and being able to stand up in front of thousands of people for hours on end and deliver that, it has to still have something really resonant about it that's simple. Yeah. And That's not to say that that generation of Plummer and Co. wasn't simple. It's effortless, but it's inhabited in a different way that we simply can't do without being laughed out of the theater. How I know we've been successful is I don't read the reviews because you can't hear, because even if they're terrible, we can't close. We have to soldier on until November. So I don't read them. But I get them anyway in the grocery store. And some of my finest reviews have been across the tomato aisle in Zayres, where someone will say, hey, I saw that play. They really got that. Really understood that. That was clear to me. And I think,
there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just people talking, right? And it's just people talking in what people assume is a hyperbolic, highfalutin, poetic, grand, classical language. It's not. Yeah. It's just people saying what they feel. Now, you've got to, again, as I say, the difficulty is, can you play the notes? And if you can play the notes, then it's music.
Well, tell me then about the difference between stage acting, for you at least, the difference between stage acting and film and television acting. Because I would think that there's an ocean of difference between the two.
Well, acting's acting, right? The kernel of truth of whatever it is you discover in your rehearsals and what you're working on at home, you center that somewhere in yourself and you say, well, this is what I understand about this guy at this moment. How am I sending it out? If I'm in a 2,000-seat auditorium, that's a different thing than if I'm in front of a 200-millimeter lens. All I have to know is the difference between those two things, and I'm away. The moment I came in here, I spotted the fact that you've got 5 cameras.
Yes.
So I know that you've got wide angles, tight angles, you've got coverage, and cheaply, because some of them are operated robotically by people that we can't see. Fine, okay, it's thrifty, it's good, it's cool. And I'm wearing a GoPro on my wrist so that I'm getting your close-up from here. But I know all of that stuff. I'm not restricted in this instance because I'm not playing anything. Right. But if I were acting an interview, I might be slightly more sensitive in terms of my gesture, in terms of what I was doing technically. The same is true in the theater. What's beautiful about the Stratford stage, the main stage, the thrust of it, is it's the most cinematic space I've ever encountered. And I grew up there. So I understand.
What do you mean by that?
Well, when I get out on that stage, there's not a lot for set. There's not a lot of anything behind me, a little bit of decor. I'm carrying the cathedral on my back, so if it's a big outfit, you know he's a big guy. He's a king. Oh, look, he's got a train. He's got a crown. There's nothing else to see, and the focus of lights and geometry is going to be on me standing alone in the middle of that room. So now all I have are Shakespeare's words and my body to tell a story. So in a cinematic sense, I tell you when it's the wide angle, when I want to embrace and include everyone on the stage. And I make gestures that and the audience is all around me. So it's very three-dimensional. Instead of a proscenium where I'm just sort of flat doing this kind of acting, I use absolutely everything three-dimensionally, knowing that's a big wide. If I want it more intimate, I restrict that. I plan to make it simpler. And if I want it just to be close, I'm absolutely still. There are no shadow movements elsewhere. I want you just to focus on what I'm saying. And if I want you to get even closer, I'll do even less. And believe it or not, on that stage, it works. So I've taken the same lessons from there and cross-pollinated that into cinema and television. I also, I won't be coy about this, I bought a lot of cameras and a lot of lenses and went, okay, so the 35 does this, the 28, 50. And I teach actors. I don't teach, but I say to actors, you want to understand how to do this? It's simple. This is a 50-millimeter lens. That's what it sees, the normal view, Cartier-Bresson, all right? 50-mil normal lens. Take it apart, 25, 28, 14. Now I see your shoes. Do up your fly. Go back to 50. You want to go close? Let's go 100. That's what ladies like. Compresses things. Tell them how it works. You want to do 200? Da-da-da-da-da-da. Before you know it, and I've learned this, talking to the focus puller of every film I've ever done, talking to, the Tony Hopkinses of the world. You watch this guy one, I don't know, how you doing? I'm good. How are you? And first thing he does, he talks to you. I mean, if you don't like it, tell me, I'll change that. Okay. And, give me another take. I'm afraid that was soft. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Before you know it, you've learned an immense amount about how easy and simple the job of pretending, lying for money really is. Though there's all this stuff underneath it.
Before we started this, I was telling you a little bit about the piece we did a couple years ago with Saul Rubinek, another Canadian actor, and one of the things that he said in the interview, and I wanted to tell you this and then see if you have the equivalence of this sort of thing. One of his first big breaks acting in a film, he was in a film with Robert Mitchum, and between takes he saw Mitchum sitting off in a chair with the script, turning page, and writing something. And he thought, my God, this man, what a professional. He's going over the script, he's making his own notes, and he gradually moved closer and closer to see that what Mitchum was doing was he'd look at a page and then he'd write on it N-A-R. And he finally had the nerve to ask what it was, and Mitchum said, oh, no acting required.
Genius.
And it was Robert Mitchum, right? Have you come across that sort of thing when you were first starting out, or even after?
Well, I've never failed to learn something new and useful every day. But I don't feel bad to tell you this, because I told Hopkins, and I was working for Kenneth Branagh, and Tony was as well, so there was me and Tony and Kenny Branagh were sitting around chatting, and I was telling Ken about one of the most salient moments in my career. It was with Tony, and we were doing Titus for Julie Taymor in Rome. Spent a lot of time in Rome. It was fantastic, and Julie is a genius, and it was an exceptionally interesting show to work on. Jessica Lange and Alan Cumming, just wonderful people and fabulous. But there was a part where I had a great big speech as Tony's little brother to his daughter, my niece, who had been raped and pillaged, tongue cut out, hands cut off, bleeding from the thighs. Not a nice scene. And the lines are remarkably poetic, very, very beautiful, as Shakespeare and Uncle Marcus list all of the things she used to do so well with her hands and her tongue, like sing and play the lute, which is really kind of sad and horrible. But that's the beauty of the poetry, the poetic kind of contrapuntal thing that Shakespeare wants you to do. But in a movie, it's not as free-flowing and direct. Now, what Julie had planned was an enormous background of animation, computer-generated, and at that time very much more expensive than it is today. And it was going to be a great part of our budget. Pardon me. So we shot the first part of the speech, about 90 lines. And the last part, because you went into the sulphurous bog in the Bosco Manciana outside Rome, and there was Laura Fraser standing, no tongue, no arms, bleeding from the thighs in a white dress, going, and I went out and said, oh my goodness, here you are. And then we cut, and we did well, never mind, I'll take you to Uncle, my brother Tony, and we'll get on with the play. But we didn't do the middle piece, because that was the one where all the CGI was going, where all these magical, fantastical Julie Taymor things were going. Well, 6 months into the process, we'd run out of money. And I thought, she's never going to shoot that piece where I'm saying all these beautiful lines, which is the reason I signed the contract. Damn her. So I said to Julie, I see that on the schedule we're still here, and we haven't done that. Oh, yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to. So I phoned New York. I said, get my agent, get me out of this stupid movie. It was way too late for that. And so I said, well, what am I going to do? He said, well, go to the director, see what she can do. I said, well, what are you going to do to connect the first part of the speech to the second part of the speech? Well, when Laura answers the question, why don't you speak to me, and she spits blood out in slow motion, I'll give you the cinematic equivalent. I said, the cinematic equivalent? What the hell is that? So I go to the editor, the Oscar-winning Françoise Bonneau. I said, what does she mean by cinematic equivalent? Well, there's a 3.5-second slow motion thing where Laura spits blood when you ask her this question. And you have 3.5 seconds correspondingly to pull some kind of face. I just thought, I'm doomed. This is a disaster. So I did storyboards of what face I might best pull in those 3.5 seconds, and I did it. And I showed Julie. I said, okay, so do you think this would work? And it was maybe 3 a.m, somewhere outside Rome in the dark. I really don't know what you're talking about. Well, it kind of looks like that. No, I don't know. So I panicked, and I went to Hopkins, and I said, Tony, I'm screwed. I've got a close-up in the middle of these woods with Laura there, and I got to act all this stuff that's now cut. And you've been around. What the hell am I going to do? And he thought for a moment, and he said, fuck him. Just phone it in. I said, I beg your pardon? He said, fuck him. Just stand there. I said, you're kidding me. He said, no. Just don't do anything. So I said, all right, Tony. So we go to the Bosco Manziana months later. There's 150 people. There's no need. We could have done this in a parking lot in Burbank, right? It's a close-up. Anamorphic wide. Close-up. Me, 3.5 seconds. And I think, do I trust him or do I not trust him?
Dear God. Okay.
And we get all these people there. We even get Laura Fraser off camera, standing on a log in the middle of the sulphurous bog. And I stand there, and she says action, and I do this. And she says cut. And she goes, oh my God, that was wonderful. And I'm thinking, what the hell? Are you kidding me? So then she says, maybe we could do it again. And now I'm feeling cocky. I go, why? I think we might have that. Well, it's in slow motion and we can't actually tell. And I said, are you suggesting I raise an eyebrow? Because in slow motion that would look like a double conch with a fadeaway, you know? And she said, so I agree to do this again. And I then, emboldened by Tony's direction, go, okay, nothing but with feeling. I cannot tell you the number of people who came to me after and said, you know, my favorite part in the movie with you is that moment when you see her and you just see that she's lost everything. And I went, oh my God. N-A-R. Just show up. Look at lens. Do nothing. P.S. Don't embarrass yourself or me. And it was such an interesting thing because I so many times saw Tony show up. He's got a Stephen King novel in the one hand. His flies undone, his shoes are unlaced, and he comes up, the dresser's racing after him. He says, no, that's fine. It's $150 million. Take the book. Doesn't do anything else. And then just acts between action and cut. No more, no less. And when they say cut, he goes back to telling jokes or goes back to his dressing room, plays a little piano, reads a little Stephen King. You ready for me? He's done all the planning. He's done all the work. The rest is just show up. And I thought, oh, God, there is such a lot of extra acting in movies I've done that I wish I had back because I could use it to the end of my career. So it was it was a watershed. So
there you go.
Yeah,
that's better. That one's better.
Well, but it's the same story.
It is the same story.
Saul is brilliant at that stuff, and he knows. And I hope to work with him again someday. Soon we did Trotsky for Jacob Tierney together, and he's a class act.
In our last couple of minutes, I just want to ask you something personally about the fact that you live here in Stratford, but you have this career, this acting career outside of the stages here that takes you everywhere. Why have you stayed here? What is it about this place? Well,
it's a beautiful place. It's also a place to do extraordinary work. You speak to me on a day that is a celebratory day. My wife is a brilliant director. She directed and choreographed the phenomenally fabulous production of Crazy for You. She did last year's Fiddler. She directed me as Cyrano de Bergerac. Oliver, I did Fagin for her. So she's blossomed and done extraordinary things here. I can come back and do remarkable plays with wonderful, remarkable people. Our kids have grown up. Our eldest it's her last day of school today. She swanned out, all dressed, the sunglasses, took a car and took off. And we thought, wow, and off to U of T to be a life science girl and a member of the varsity blue volleyball team. Her brother, Elder, is a double major in neuroscience and philosopher and fencing and whatnot, and it all happened because we could do the stuff we did with them in Stratford. And their elder brother's an editor doing cool movie things, and it all happened here in Stratford because we could get them to 1,000 different things. You forget the kid, you forget the kid's lunch. In 5 minutes, you've made up and put the kid in the right place and the lunch in the right place. The baby stroller doesn't fall off the top of the car without somebody going, hey, Feore, don't do that. So it's been a remarkably supportive community, and I come back to it, regularly for an infusion of the kind of thing that we talked about with King Lear, to do the job properly. And then I take that off and go and do Spider-Man or Revolution or, Sensitive Skin, whatever other shows or things I do, and they all come from the same place. And I think that foundation is Stratford, and the foundation of doing good work with good people I carry with me. So, we just do the same thing.
I want to thank you for your time doing this. It's been really good of you to do it.
Not a problem.
It was a great pleasure to meet you, too. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
That's great.